Before we begin to actually start combining like terms in problems, we also are going to need a property, and that's called the distributive property. Now this says if A, B, and C are numbers, then C times A plus B equals A times C plus A times B, meaning we would distribute the C throughout the parentheses. Now, doesn't seem very clear until we're actually looking at an example. So let's look at this example. Now remember, we're going to look at this using order of operations. Order of operations says we have to do what's inside the parentheses first. So 2 plus 3 would be 5. Now we still have to multiply that to 5 on the outside, but 5 times 5 is 25. Let's look at this same problem again using the distributive property. This follows the same pattern that we see here. Therefore, the distributive property should work. Now, the distributive property says I'm going to take it, I'm going to distribute that multiplication. So I'm going to be multiplying the 5 times the 2 and then the 5 times the 3. So 5 times 2 would be 10. And 5 times 3 would be 15. And now we can add those together and we get 25. So we actually get the same thing whether we use order of operations or the distributive property. Now with numbers it seems kind of silly to use the distributive property, but whenever we start adding variables into it, we don't really have any choice. Let's look at this problem. It says multiply 3 times x plus 1. So we're going to distribute here. We have to distribute the 3 throughout the parentheses. So 3 times x would be 3x, and 3 times a positive 1 would be a positive 3. Now we cannot go any further here because we do not have like terms. This is a variable term, and this is just a single number. So we cannot combine those. They're not the same thing. In our next example, we're going to be distributing again. We have to multiply this negative 8 to both of these terms. So negative 8 times 8y would give us negative 64y, and negative 8 times a positive 10 would be a negative 80. Now here again, these are not like terms. They are not both y's or both just plain numbers, so we can't go any farther than that. Now, what if we saw something that looked like negative 3 times 21z? We need to try and figure out when we have to distribute and when we're just supposed to multiply. This should look different than what we saw a while ago. There is not a plus or a minus sign in between here. This is just a single term. This literally means negative 3 times 21 times z. Now, because multiplication is both associative and commutative, we could rearrange our parentheses here and multiply just straight through. Negative 3 times 21 times z. Well, we could multiply the negative 3 times the 21, multiply those together to get negative 63 times z. We don't have to multiply it to each one because this is just multiplication. Here again we have the same thing. This literally says 12 times 6 times b. Everything is multiplication, so we just move left to right. 12 times 6 times b would be 72b. If you can see the difference there, then we can come up with kind of a general rule that'll help us to understand when we're supposed to multiply and when we're supposed to distribute. We always distribute when we're multiplying to more than one term. Look for the plus or the minus inside the parentheses. That's going to be your clue that we have to distribute.